Now, there's long been campaigns for people to legally be able to end their own lives or have assisted suicide, as it's known. One person who fought for that was Tony Nicklinson, unsuccessfully. His daughter, Lauren, joins us now. It's good to see you this morning. Look, Lauren, why do you still want to campaign on this? Why do you still think it is such an important issue?
Because there are still huge groups of people out there who are suffering incurably, and whilst what Dignity in Dying is wonderful, you know, that this bill coming forward today is really important, it doesn't go far enough. It wouldn't help people like my dad, who spent 7 years trapped inside his own body, living a life that he didn't want to live, but he had no way out, or he had no way out that would have been a dignified end. His choices were to starve and dehydrate himself. In the end, he contracted pneumonia, refused treatment, and died in a pretty horrendous way. So this is still an issue, and ignoring it won't go away. We know that 88% of people think that people with incurable suffering, people like Dad, should be allowed assistance to die. It was a piece of research done by My Death, My Decision, and the government isn't doing anything to tackle it. They aren't taking it far enough. They aren't allowing people like Dad to have his way out.
I mean, this is the issue, isn't it? It's those people who want to make that decision but cannot do it on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, do we know how many people this affects across the UK? I mean, how much support you would have on this?
I'm not sure how many people have got locked-in syndrome like Dad did, but sort of referring back to the stat I mentioned previously, that 88% of people do support assistance to die for people like Dad. So there is that public support there. So whilst Dignity in Dying campaign for the terminally ill, which is, we absolutely support, we do want to see it go further. And Humanists UK and My Death, My Decision are very much at the forefront of that. We need all that support that we can get.
I mean, there is going to be, a private member's bill being put forward today. I mean, looking at anything that happens here on in must be very difficult when you reflect back. Because I remember covered your dad's story at the time and just how devastated he was when his attempts failed.
Yeah, and there are still people living that life. And whilst there are people who live that life and are really happy and comfortable to do so, and that's wonderful, there will be people who are living that life and aren't happy and aren't comfortable doing so either, and they're being forgotten, or they aren't being publicly represented in the same way, and they still need to be fought for. Why do they have to be forgotten? Why do they have to be the sacrificial lamb? Why do they need to be the ones who are just expected to keep on going until nature takes its course? Why isn't their right to choose, and why isn't their autonomy being respected? Why are they just being left there? Why was Dad allowed to die in the way that he did when he could have had a much more peaceful way out? My sister, my mum and I had to watch him drown from pneumonia, die in the most awful way imaginable. Why did we have to go through that when there is an alternative, but the government don't seem to want to address it? They only seem to want to talk about the terminally ill. And, people like Dad, they're a forgotten group of people.
What about those? I mean, you've heard this argument before, because it's been a key part of this whole debate, is the idea that if this was to be allowed, that there may be people who would feel that they were a burden on society or a burden on their family, who may feel a little bit coerced into deciding to end their life. How do you tackle that?
So that argument would apply whether someone's terminally ill or has incurable suffering. So it's sort of relevant across the broader issue. But it wouldn't be as simple as walking up to your GP and asking for an overdose and getting it. It would be a heavily regulated system, and it absolutely should be. There should be doctors involved, there should be courts if needed, there should be processes to protect those people. But equally, those processes should give people like Dad their right to choose. That I find it impossible to believe that a country like ours, which is meant to have, supposed sophisticated governance, can't seem to find a way to make it work. I find it hard to believe that they can't even find a way to address it, to debate it, to discuss it, let alone come to a viable conclusion. There would obviously be safeguards in place, but there has to be a way to protect both sides of the argument, both groups of people.
I know you would have wanted this decision, if anything was to go your way, you would have wanted this, 9 years ago. How does it affect your memories of your dad, who we know was a fun character along his journey? How does it affect your memory of him, knowing that his life ended in a way he really didn't want it to?
I think my sister and I will always talk about the before and the after dad. Sorry. We think of him pre-stroke, which is a lot of the images that you've shown on this news piece, and then we think about him post-stroke. And I suppose that's probably a natural part of just trying to grieve and address the experience that we had. But I think ultimately when he refused that treatment, when he knew that he was poorly, we always respected that decision, because some people are like, well, he got what he wanted in the end. He got to die. And he got to die, but it wasn't in the way that he wanted. It was still very painful for him. It was still very painful for us to watch. But, we always try and think of him in this way, the times before.
Lauren, really appreciate you talking to us. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.